the second group worked in Shenzhen, China. We have all the morning critics that have stayed now in the afternoon, but we have 3 new additions. We have Eric Barry from Eric Barry Architects. Eric is also the keynote speaker this evening. We have Catherine Firth, the head of design of the London Legacy Development Corporation. And we have Jonathan Rose from NICOM, in addition to the other 5 members of BOIN. We have our director here, Brett, that joined us now, and an additional critic. Okay, so we'll start with the group working on that.
Good afternoon, I'm Juliana, Inspector, Siddharth, and Mission, and we're dealing with informality as a method in the case of Dharavi in Mumbai. Informality is a widespread urban condition that challenges the subject of urbanism, especially in the non-urban city. Our aim is to test the role of urbanism and spatial strategy and design in such contexts in order to develop an integrated spatial strategy that can deal with all the different scales of informality. In order to do so, we focus in the example of Mumbai, that is a extreme case of rapidly growing city, and is not only the 3rd densest city in the world, but also has this density shaped in a unique and unequal pattern. As we can see, the 60% of the population lives in only 6% of the land. All these dots are where the informal settlements are in the Mumbai area. Dharavi is the larger of these informal settlements. They occupy 0.5% of the area of Mumbai, and is home for around 600,000 inhabitants according to government data. But this data doesn't even take into consideration the tenants' occupation and the migrants that live and they sleep in the industries, where shared bed system is it's commonplace there, where you have the industry working in the ground floor, and even the storages in the upper floors, but they sleep in the same place, which can raise Dharavi's population to over 1 million, making it one of the densest places on Earth. And due to the central location of Dharavi in Mumbai, and the close proximity of key places in the city, like the University of Mumbai, second campus, and the Bandakula complex, that's the new financial district, that we can see that the land of Bandakula complex in the last decades have risen significantly. Dharavi finds itself under great development pressure from the real estate market, and its property value are as high as one check being $45,000. But we see that without even considering the land value, Dharavi is already the gold mine that they call, with around 10,000 businesses that play a crucial role in the Mumbai economy. And most of these activities are related to industries, and the main ones being recycling, leather, pottery, and garments and food industry, which is distributed all over the fabric of Dharavi. And these productive activities employ around 80% of its population, giving a unique character that we cannot see in many other informal settlements around the world. And it's not only residents, as most tend to see informal settlements, but it's a mixed, it's a dense, intense, and mixed-use environment driven by its productive activities, as we call a massive workshop that was occupied over time. And this is what this specificity of Dharavi is what can help us to give some insight on how to work with informality in a more inclusive approach. But in the midst of this emphasis of the land value of Dharavi, what happened was the government in '96 had a competition for redevelop the whole area according to Bandakula complex standards, and the winning one was Mukesh Mehta's proposal that he presented here in AA last year, and totally changing the characteristics of what Dharavi is, and facing as a new financial district as well. And due to this controversial plan in the last decade in Mumbai, raising urban debate has been taking place, And the good thing about this debate is they've been trying to do how to address informal settlements that, as you can see, is a big problem in Mumbai and many places in India. And this summer we had the opportunity to go there and we interviewed all of them besides Raul Malhotra. But what we could see is that the tendency is division between people that defend the top-down approach and others that defend the bottom-up approach. And they have incapacity to agree upon what will be a strategy for Dharavi, since the top-down totally shift what Dharavi is, but the bottom-up can never reach the scale of the needs of such settlement. And because of this impasse, the government didn't do anything in Dharavi for all these years. And in 2012, last year, they started. They did a competition for Sector 5 that's in the corner of Dharavi, the closer one to Banakula complex, and almost no entries were given, especially in terms of architecture. And it continues showing the tendency that the government has only to link it to Banakula complex, and they still don't know how to deal with the informal settlement in a productive manner. And we believe that postponing any solution, like it's been happening for last decade, okay, it's better than doing what Mukesh Mehta wanted, but still, growing without support, many of these units will, like they already have been, be developed like high-rise structures because of the high land value. The people are already selling their own units. And the industries will also reach their maximum potential and will not be able to grow and become more productive, so therefore they will not be able to be competitive in the market. And the diverse characters will be erased. We believe that to start providing some answers to the informal, and especially in the case of Dharavi, we should not erase the existing condition, but should work with these many different layers that Dharavi has, as you can see here, and learn from it in order to develop an integrated strategy. And this is what we could see. It could be an initiation strategy for Dharavi, is identification, relocation and requalification, and new connection and new uses. We say that if we want to learn from the informal logic and link informal and formal territories, we should have a strategy that would start identifying the central core, relocate some of these activities towards the edges, requalify Dharavi as a whole, establish new connections, especially with Bandrakula, the university, in a more productive manner, and introduce new uses not only in Sector 5, but throughout the Dharavi territory. And we have four different approaches that are integrated within this main approach. And mine, Juliana, I will explore the roles of space of engagement and in central core as a identification strategy. SEPA will deal with the precarious conditions of the edge and with the migrant situation that's Dharavi's first entry place into Mumbai, is the larger one in Mumbai. SIDA will deal with the industry and the requalification and relocation of recycling industry to the marine station sites. And Bhushan will deal with Sector 5 and how can we deal with more a productive link between these two territories. And the first strategy that I'm dealing with is to explore the potential of the logic of communality in informal settlement as a tool to weave multiple engagements between different actors that compose the city fabric. Focusing on the in-between state that compose most Indian cities, I state in between the urban and the rural, between the formal and the informal, between interior and exterior spaces. I explore the zone of maximal exchange and engagement that blur the definitions, boundaries, and generate a productive realm and interactions. As we can see here, is where most of the trades take place, is in this in-between reality, and in the space not only between the formal and informal settlements, but even within the informal settlements is in between the interior and exterior places. So, in order to understand what will be the spatiality of the space of engagement, I I see that the potential that it has to contribute is to control the flow between interior and exterior activities, acting as efficient filters in high-dense areas, to enable a vicinity network to be formed, strengthening community support. Anybody that speaks Spanish, what El Chavo del Ocho. This is a program that we have where the vicinity network is all engaged in the patio. And provide insights on how to allow different families to share basic facilities, rationalizing service provision in order to reach the scale of need that Darabi has. And looking at how this space takes place in Darabi, three key aspects could be seen as potential to development. What are the displacement of penetration and the institutional support, that this is a community building. They actually can give us some insight on how to prevent encroachment that didn't happen in this area, but it did in the surrounding area if we start looking at it better. And how the multiple access to the street allows a variation in the interaction in interior and exterior spaces. And giving this adaptive block configuration that allows different scales of activities to happen in the same block. But like I was talking before, the tendency that's happening in Darabi right now towards formalization is not in the best way it could happen, taking what the advantage this informal settlement has. And the larger tendency is that when the institution of large-scale buildings like the high-rises or even institution like the school, they have a full integration with the surrounding and leaving the few open spaces that exist completely are garbage dump. Although they do the intervention already with a park and all the provisions, everything is destructed after a while. So how could we manipulate these principles in order to achieve a better intervention? I take this case of Chamada Bazaar in the leather industry neighborhood, and see that the three-dimensional, the engagement of three-dimensional surface creates a series of thresholds, as we can see also in this picture, that allows different activities to take place. And that another principle is that institutional void can act as a catalyzer of community engagement through the dispersal of knowledge and public service and other cultural enablers. And this structure, they tend to have a larger scale than the surrounding activities. The units tend to be larger, and they relate strongly to the immediate surrounding, creating spaces, public spaces like this within the fabric. And the third last principle to take into the interventions is the space of engagement as infrastructure and public realm organizing structure. In this case, the Maidan is a cricket field that they have all over Mumbai. It is one of the places that never get encroachment. And versus residual space in one of the densest areas in Dharavi, how the difference between this one and the engagement with the adjacent infrastructure and this one just being close to this wall of the new redevelopment that created this empty space. Actually, this one is just a garbage dump and also an open toilet. And facing the inability of the existing proposal to intervene in the built fabric, I propose to intervene without wiping out everything. I propose to intervene in the unbuilt fabric in order to start giving us some new answers. And if we start drawing it in a different way, we can see that how we can start finding answers to how to intervene in the Dharavi itself, and maybe reach not an impasse between the different actors, but make them work together. The intervention is a multi-scalar intervention, and the first part of it, and then if we take how this intervention they come together in Dharavi, we can see the active spine is standing towards now is this 9-feet road and stops here, and how a continuation towards Vandrapula complex and the university in sector 5 that Bhushan will explore further, and how that allows a series of thresholds to start bleeding out into the interior fabric, and together especially with these pocket spaces connected to different communities. The first one, the note of support. In order to explore better the role of space of engagement, I went back to some case studies of Darabi when we went to the visit and applied some of the principles studies. So these I use especially the voice strategy to intervene in the private areas. The first one is the activating engagement between multiple users. So in a community like this, where the only shared space that they have, it's not so well used. It's only used when there is a religious festivity because there is a temple close by. But how can we introduce other activities that need open area, like a school with a small scale school with a library, daycare, and especially toilets, because there is one toilet for every 100 person approximately in the army. And this is like the smallest scale, how do you track locally? And also how can we start engaging, generating, this is an institutional, is a existing void that was created through the building of 4 high rises that were here. But all the surrounding, as we can see in this image, all the surrounding turns its back. So all these activities that is around, they only integrate with the surrounding streets and not with the space itself, and creating a very dense area in some parts and very residual or empty spaces in others. And what I propose is to better utilize the space, also inserting an institution in it that can be a school or theater, and how these high-rises can better integrate with ground floor level. And throughout the fabric of Darabi, the new high-rises that are coming up, they obey more the rules of the modernists of England and anywhere else in Europe than the own tradition that India has. Like here is a generic floor apartment from a joint family system in India. When you combine different members of the family, but if you can start seeing it as different families, but dividing basic service together. And the fourth, in the small scale, the fourth and the last kind of intervention that could affect locally is such as the intervening in the 3-dimensional facades, like the favela painting was done in Rio de Janeiro, where such a, what can seem like a naive intervention actually raises the visibility of the area and increases safety and allows the commerce to develop in this ground floor. The second scale of the intervention is active spine, and I take in consideration the corridor concept as a conflicted territories that pairs the connectivity with separation, as a space that baffles between these two words, to use this as a tool to link formal and informal territories in a more beneficial manner and blurring the boundaries. While, like right now, the whole Darabi is segregated, how can we start integrated but not really changing the whole character of the area? And key territories along this farm, you use architectonic and colloquial intervention to provide needed facilities, not only locally, that's the difference between two scales, not only locally, but for Mumbai as a whole, that as a city that's developing fast, also didn't develop much, especially in terms of institutional supports. And the architectonic interventions will act as a catalyzer of the community engagement within the territory and with Mumbai. As we can see here, is to provide just a couple of examples of how could this take shape. At site number 5, that's this one, where we have the leather industry starting here. And we have a cemetery, a Muslim cemetery as well, where the Muslims are the ones that do the leather industry. And here's the main road. How this territory that was once completely viewed and segregated from the cemetery can start to be opened up. And as we can see here, this is the space of engagement of the void where you have the infrastructure and the public realm existing in both sides, but without any connection in the spine. But to allow these thresholds to be expanded to the territory, you can see how here the building itself helps to link the cemetery with the leather industry. That it might seem odd to us, but all the goats live in the leather industry itself, so they live in the house of people in the street. While you do have a major underutilized area with a cemetery just across the street. And another similar kind of intervention is the pottery industry. That it's, I'll just go back to show the place. The pottery industry is here, which is here. It's this whole area. The pottery industry, you can see in the model. And how this is, it is a dying industry because people are not buying pottery anymore. They're doing out of other materials, the basic utensils like plates. And how could we have regenerate this industry through intervention like integrating it with the University of Mumbai and giving new facilities to also for them to show their products. And of course, it is just the beginning, but how can a series of intervention act, as we can see all this where these buildings are, especially in Sector 5, that Bhushan will treat better, how they can act better to link informal and formal territory. And the third and last scale of intervention is borders as active zones of exchange in order to densify the whole rest of the core. So not focusing only in the institutional support and in this spine, but how can we figure a plan that could act in the whole Dharavi? Linking that concept, to do that, we cannot just explore space of engagement, but we have to find key areas where to implement it, and linking the concept of the space of engagement with sentence differentiations of edges and between boundary and borders, where borders are the zones in a habitat where organisms become more interactive, while boundaries are limits of a territory and causes division. We establish here, this is the Nagar division, that's the different communities that migrated into Dharavi, they're called Nagar. And you have how these borders could start overlapping in order to create this public realm intervention, and with the active spine, and where key areas of institutional support could start evolving. So this scale is composed of the public realm and institutional intervention, and infrastructure support that's basically expanding sewage and water and electricity provisions, paving and supplying drainage system to the streets, and intervening in three-dimensional surface. I think this, although this is the basic, it cannot be forgotten in such an intervention because it's also key for the qualification of the area. And if we start to see how boundaries of Nagas, socio-cultural boundaries of the Nagas, and the physical boundary of infrastructure line can start to become more a border of public realm and institutional intervention that help bring in these different communities together, that although they are from different places in India, and then they come here and live separately, they do share, when they are close together, they do share industrial activities, or they might produce all garments together, but it's still quite segregated. So how can institutional support in something that's not only their communities back home, like most of the institutions are there related to religion or to something back home, how can we start establishing something that links more globally all of them? So bringing all this information together, we can start to see how the space of engagement can significantly make a difference in redeveloped strategies for Dharavi, creating and supporting a network in all the different scales. And this is Dharavi, as they call there, is right in the heart of Mumbai, and this is how we come with the interventions.
After the project that explains the strategy to requalify the central area or the core area of Dharavi, my project tries to use the informal way of growth or informality method, like an organic way of growth that has to be maintained in an informed manner in order to develop an area. And I'm dealing with the edge condition that is still growing on the northern part of Dharavi, and is mainly occupied by the migrants who arrived the latest. It's the latest area that has been developed in Dharavi. As Juliana already explained, migrate to Dharavi are trying to either gain experience or make profit, and then decide to settle in Dharavi itself or Mumbai, or migrate back to where they came from. And through the years, there has been established a pattern of migration that has shaped Dharavi. Certain people from different parts of India come to, when they come to Dharavi, they know where to go. They have their own neighborhoods represented by their own community, and each community takes over a certain industry or business. So actually, people who migrate to Mumbai, and when they enter Dharavi, know where they're going and know what they're going to do. And through the years, each of these communities have shaped their own kind of fabric that works with their characteristics of either the industry or business or their pattern of living. And by looking at these characteristics that we see in Dharavi, we can actually learn from this informal way of developing an urban area and try to plan for further growth. Now, what I'm dealing with is the latest piece of land that has been developed, and it has been occupied by a Maharashtrian community. This area especially has the worst kind of quality in terms of the living quality, and people here are usually not economically able to handle a better kind of life. And this area is a kind of a no-go zone by government, and as a result, the people there have tried their best to make a kind of a situation for their living, and they have the basic kind of living qualities, and it has really not been involved. This fabric is not involved in the active sector of Dharavi. This land is growing towards the river coast, and it's been occupied by reclaiming the unstable lands towards the river. And as a result of the lack of proper land, the fabric is made up of linear blocks, which is mainly housing units, and it's immensely dense and has a lack of proper access, and as a result, there's no kind of integration of this part with the active sectors of Dharavi. And we can see the difference in terms of the types of the units and the blocks, the accessibility, and the mixture of functions. The bottom section is the edge condition, and the top is a section of somewhere in the middle of Dharavi. And this edge condition has been happened, as I said before, by claiming the unstable land, and has been grown in a linear kind of way, and it's not being taken care of. It can grow over and over again with the same kind of low quality of life, and we can see how poor it is in terms of the number of the productive units that are in the fabric. The yellow ones are the housing, and the ones at the edge are the small commercial units. Now, in order to requalify this part and provide a kind of a system for further growth, we can learn from another bit of fabric by the same community, which takes over the leather industry, and it has been really successful in terms of the industrial activity, but yet this part in the middle also has a full kind of quality in terms of the light quality. We can see how there are active units in this center area, and there are almost nothing on the edge. And in terms of the density, we can see how much more dense this edge condition is, and there are certain kind of open spaces in the other part in the center. This area is composed of housing, industry, and commercial units, and they all work together as a network, which makes it a productive sector. And even within this area, there are again another categorization, which is nagars, that Julian already explained the terms for the smaller communities, that each of these nagars take over one step of the leather industry, and they are again composed of the network of the housing, the industry, and the commercials. And if we look closely, we can see how the units in this area have shaped clusters with the open space, with different kind of mixtures of the blocks and units, and this is actually what enables this part of fabric to become more successful than the other one at the edge. And as we start to apply these principles that we extracted from that part, we can see how the center area starts to change, and in a way we can start to requalify this edge condition with the principles extracted from Dharavi itself. But yet this is not enough for the growth of Dharavi, and we have still the intensity or the pressure inside Dharavi that this edge condition can try to absorb, and tries to de-densify this core area, as well as provide a system to accommodate the new people who arrive almost all through all the year. Although there's a seasonal kind of migration pattern, but almost through all the year there are certain people being added to the population of Dharavi. And for doing so, we extracted the kind of the mixtures we need, the open spaces in between the blocks, the different units, and an infrastructure that combines all these things together. For providing the units, we should be informed of the people who migrate to Dharavi. So there are unskilled labor, there are skilled labor, there are family who are tending to live in Dharavi, there are family who are just living in Dharavi and living elsewhere, and these kind of categorization can help develop or design the kind of units needed for accommodating these people. And also the living pattern, the traditional living pattern of Indian families, that they tend to live together, and the successful experiences in Mumbai, in India, can help us develop this kind of system for Dharavi. And if we start to see how these units can be combined together to shape clusters along with the courtyards and infrastructure, we can start to develop that kind of system that accommodates people. And these spaces in between, or the courtyards, can vary due to the need. Either we can have industrial areas or housing areas, or these things are able to turn into each other through time if they're developed. And this kind of growth is kind of controlled, and because Dharavi has a limited capacity to absorb people, so this kind of growth cannot happen for forever. So the kind of physical boundary on the northern part, which is a canal and a green area, can help to control this kind of growth. And in this section, we can see how these principles from Dharavi can help to change the quality. On the right, you can see the core area with the situation now, and on the right, with the use of the gridness, the infrastructure, the parking spaces in between, and the physical boundaries, we can see how it can start to change. And already we can see a plan that tries to de-densify the core area, along with absorbing migrants who come and add to the population of the urban.
As Juliana has explained in the introduction, Dharavi is a big warehouse of productivity. It has many industries and many small businesses working in it, which are extremely important for the local and global market. These industries are plateauing. They do not have the place to expand and the skill to develop themselves with changing pollution norms. It thus becomes important to see how the industries expand in such that of economic productivity and resilience to change can increase, and simultaneously there's de-densification of the current industrial region to improve its productivity. This exercise will at large show through a test in recycling industry region that how industry can become a central tool for change rather than thinking through housing numbers. Above are the major industrial regions of Dharavi. Spatially, when we study the industrial regions, we see any industry works in multiple small blocks rather than single block, with each block having its own role in the process, which gives them resistance as they can change or adapt quickly because of the multiple players. When we zoom in, we see work on relation of voids and blocks. The industries work on the relation of voids and blocks. Blocks that are designed based on movement pattern, which adapt to the changing activity, and voids which play key three roles: movement of goods, network among players, and industrial spillover spaces. Above, the lower plan shows the three major industrial portions of Dharavi: recycling, leather, and pottery. The second showing the location of small-scale industry. The top line, which more importantly shows the movement infrastructure, which is a reason for the industry's presence. Red line indicating the commercial usage where the material is sold, and the black line indicating the movement infrastructure for industrial material and all. As we know, movement plays a key role for industries. The main primary lines divide Dharavi into main zones. Similarly, the secondary lines divide Dharavi into smaller zones. Each zoning has an industrial area of itself and having its own movement pattern. As you can see, recycling industry has a linear movement pattern, leather has a cul-de-sac movement pattern, pottery and new transit camp have a gridded movement pattern, and a small-scale industry have radial movement patterns. The movement pattern lead to the kind of block which exists in the region. For example, recycling industry has a linear block, thus creating a deep plan, vis-a-vis the transit camp, which has a gridded movement pattern, creating smaller blocks. The movement block ratio also shows where industries exist and where they cannot. The street versus block ratio in depth shows that industries have developed in the above three regions, but industries could not develop in the region of transit camps. The study also shows how different kinds of industries require a different type of a block to exist, and which further adapts to its role in the process of the industry. This led to an in-depth study of the block itself. The block was studied in two regions, the recycling and the pottery industry. In the recycling industry, there are three main block types. First is the collection block, which are large blocks split in multiple parts based on differentiation of material. Second is the storage, which are double-heighted spaces storing one kind of material and processing further differentiation in them based on color, etc. The third is the processing block, which are small in size, each having a specific role in the process of recycling. At the first floor, there's generally housing, as the industry works 24 hours, and these are regions where the labor sleeps in shifts. As a process in the recycling industry, the blocks are located from inside to outside. The collection blocks are located along the main street and with the storage near to them. The processing block go more further inside. This shows the length. This shows the length, depth, and height, and the location clearly signifying the role of the block in the industry. In the pottery industry, block and they are double-story block with first floor generally residential. It is a live-work environment. The block is designed in a way that it has two-sided streets. The internal street is where the process happens, like baking, storage, etc. And the external street is where the sale of the product is happening. This is external, internal street. The block adapts with the changing role which it plays in the industry. The first is the storage block of the recycling industry, and the second is the pottery industry block. Going further into the study of voids. The voids also play a key role in for the running of the industry. The key three roles as specified earlier: movement of goods, networking among players, and industrial spillover spaces. But the problem is there's hardly any differentiation among the voids. The street is the only kind of void in the region, which is visible in both of them. There's no differentiation, hierarchy, or frontality, backside, anything. Post-analysis of how two major industrial regions spatially work in Dharavi, I tried to test the understanding for one such industry, expanding the recycling industry in Mahim railway yard, and then de-densifying the major recycling industry core. The first importance was to build a brief for the expanded site. The first recycling industry, of course, the three main processes: expanding the university from sectors 5, which Bhushan will explain, and along with the social facility for migrant labor. Third, the new workshops where finished goods can also be produced from recycled material. To start with the spatial process, I overlaid the movement grid on the site, considering the two parallel roads along the street. To test further, I worked on the two grids of the recycling industry. The first having different dimension, which is this one, and the second having a defined dimension. In this first one, the grids having different dimension, they created three different zones, which according to me would make three different regions and not really help in association of the block, of the three zones. Thus, I started the test on the testing on the second side, which I divided the grid equally and tried to develop one cluster between the grids. The cluster was developed in a way that there are three clear differentiation of the role of voids. The first is the main street. The second is small vehicular pedestrian streets, and the third the industrial spillover voids. And accordingly, there were the four types of blocks. First, the collection blocks, which are the main large blocks. Second, the processing blocks, which are the smaller blocks inside. And third, the new workshops, which come outside. And finally, the new social infrastructure type, which I introduced. Each type of void is organized around the block of its relation. Like the storage block is placed along the main road, marked in red. And the processing block are located along the small vehicular and pedestrian movement roads. They both work together as the industrial spillover voids. The new workshops are arranged in a way that they, in one side they open to the main street, and on the other side they open to the small vehicular street, and both combining, having a small spillover void. And the fourth block works as a social infrastructure, medical facilities, or other training facilities. At the upper level of storage, I added the layer of housing. These are the sections showing the way cluster is working. The voids play a key role in developing productivity of the cluster. You can see the central void having been used as the spillover space and the main street as the movement lines. These are the central void. The section also shows the block can adapt to its changing roles and how the new uses can work in tangent with the recycling process. These are the new workshops. So, uh, when we look at large scale, the drawing shows us the differentiation voids in the region. The main red movement lines for the bringing in the goods or taking out, the spillover voids for the industries to work, and the small vehicle pedestrian voids for the networks. The volumetrically we can see where the different activities are located in the site. The lower one showing the industrial process, the collection, the storage, and the main movement lines, and the process along the secondary lines, which is happening. And the above drawing shows the new workshops, incubators, and social facilities will work. The two blocks along the station will be extended as the university campuses from Sector 5. This is the overall massing of and the section showing through the different activities will be working through together and impacting on the productivity of the recycling industry, working beyond the site. They will start, small voids will start opening up to show, firstly to impact on the de-densification of the larger site. An image could be read thus of how de-densification can happen in the current industry and the recycling based on the idea of creating differentiation among voids. Finally, I would say similar logics could be used to show how we can impact in other regions like the pottery industry, the small scale industry post de-densification of the leather industry, which Bhushan is proposed. Thank you.
The project aims at creating an industrial-based innovation neighborhood for the development of Dharavi. The project looks at the Dharavi, the relationship with the other actors of the city, and how it could be mutually beneficial to both. If you see the two maps, then this is the map of Mumbai in 1960, and this is the map in Mumbai in 2000. Maps out the area of where the land values of Mumbai were higher. It is clearly seen that as the economic areas of Mumbai start growing, the commercial areas, the land value also, the surrounding land value also start increases. If you look at the Dharavi scale, as I mentioned before, it is a strategic point where these two highways, that is the Western Express Highway and Eastern Express Highway meet. And the lifelines of Mumbai, that is the railway lines, meet each other. It is bounded by the road which travels east to west, connecting eastern and western parts of Mumbai. Also, two strong actors surrounding Dharavi and which have already taken over the land of Dharavi are also trying to influence the development of Dharavi, that is the University of Mumbai, Kalina campus, and the business district, that is the Vanderbilt complex. Also, it has been the residential fabrics also are Dharavi is also standing between the two residential complexes. And location of adjacency functional district and university and the residential areas defines the land value of Dharavi. Now if we zoom into the site which I'm taking over is Sector 5. Sector 5 is the most open space in the whole of Dharavi. What are the factors which make Sector 5 important, and what are the factors that are making Sector 5? There is a bus depot, and there are some shanties, there are some public housing which has been proposed over a period of time in 1990s. The government had implemented a slum rehab program which they removed slums from the ground level and stacked vertically in kind of a horizontal, in a vertical slum. The road on the southern part of Sector 5 has a special characteristic of Dharavi, which goes from selling products which are prepared in Dharavi itself to starting the new labor conditions. If Sector 5 tries to expand, then what are the links in which part the Sector 5 can expand? There are two thick edges on the eastern and southern side of Dharavi. The eastern side is the central railway line, which is not permeable, and the southern side is the rest of Dharavi, which has its own strong ecology. So Sector 5 can expand and get linked to the northern side where university and financial districts are. There is a potential for Sector 5 to link with university and BKC and try to create a corridor and establishing a special linkage. If we look at Dharavi, as mentioned before, Dharavi is composed of many layers. The Dharavi has got different layers of association with itself to industries. It has got high density housing, It has got different labor conditions, different spaces of engagement. But the question arises, does the Sector 5 contribute to the character of Dharavi, or will it exist without having Sector 5? Does it add to its character? Looking at different layers of Dharavi, which are most prominent in Dharavi in this section and surrounding areas, there's the University campus, is the Bandakulla complex, there is a commercial district. There are lots of high density housing which has to be de-densified somewhere. There are lots of labor conditions which are constantly adapting and changing new labor conditions. And also there are different industries. Different industries, there are around 10,000 different industries, but some are very prominent in it and some are very polluted. If we look in the layer of industries, the three industries which I'm concentrating on is the leather industry, the textile industry, and the finished products or recycling industry. Recycling industry is not a full-fledged industry which produces final products and sell it to the people. It has reached a level where it can just produce and finish raw materials of plastics and metal, and they sell it to the industries or the bigger companies. Whereas in the leather industry, almost everything in the leather industry happens in Dharavi itself, right from getting all the animal hides and making finished products of bags and leather jackets, etc. Whereas the textile industry is one of the small-scale industries in Dharavi which has got great potential to link with the other industries and try to create new synergies where they can expand the textile industry on a bigger scale. The textile industry is kind of an industry which only part of its process is done in Dharavi, and the rest of the part are gone to other parts of India. There are again different housing layers which we see. There are high density housing, there are government implemented slum rehab housing which are not in good condition as which are as bad as existing shanty towns and slums. There is also commercial ecology which is there, which is the labor conditions, and the transit camp is a prime example of labor conditions, how it has been the speciality of transit camps, how they are restricting themselves not to grow into big scale industries, but they are just constantly evolving and creating not just the living working conditions on the down and living conditions on the top, but it's actually observed when we went to the people have started to start up offices in the top floor of the transit camps, and where the bottom floors are living conditions. Also, the Bandakulla complex has started to influence its development of Dharavi, where MMRDA, that is the development authority of that region, have started to take Sector 5 in their zone of developing of extension of Bandakulla complex. Now, if we see what are the surrounding regions that are bounded by Dharavi. So one is the University of Mumbai, Kalina campus, and another is the financial district, is Bandakulla complex. As we saw the proposals of Mukesh Mehta and other proposals, they have started. We can see a hint of Bandakulla complex in Dharavi, in Sector 5, and also in the rest of Dharavi. They have tried to change from the existing conditions into a much more formalized manner. If you look at if you look at this diagram, the blue color is the university and the orange color is the Bandakulla complex. Both are in a monofunctional atmosphere. Whereas in comparison to Dharavi is a much more multifunctional, where things are quite integrated with each other. If you zoom into the university campus is an extension of University of Mumbai, which is in the southern part of the Mumbai region. And they have started to try to develop this big area. But we can see there are, but looking at a plan, you cannot have any spatial logic that defines the character of the university. They look like buildings in the open space. There is no connection with the outer world. They look like a gated community inside the city itself. A financial district is built on a reclaimed land. There has been a time process where the whole of this region was a mudland, but as government needed a financial district, they started to reclaim land, and now this has become the most costliest region in India. They have corporate offices starting from multinational companies, head offices of banks, sports complex, and diamond market. It is like an alien in the street food just next to Dharavi and trying to work with each other. Now, if you see what are the actors that are trying to influence the development of Sector 5, as we see, as any informal settlement is like a sponge. It tries to take everything what comes to it and try to form a logic, a spatial character in itself. The main characters that try to influence the development in Sector 5 are from the labor conditions, the industries, the high density housing. There are some incubator spaces, migrant housing which are already coming there and which will not stop for a long time. Then there is a Mandakola complex, the university campus, and the new activities that could be created because of these. Now, if you see, this is the Sector 5, and there are many open lands in the surrounding area. I would like to create a spatial linkage between the 3-4 sites and try to create a corridor for development of the Dharavi, which could be beneficial for both. Now, trying to set a brief for working on Sector 5. What are the functions that should be taken over Sector 5 and that should be kept at a bay away from Sector 5? Because if you try to take Dharavi into Bandarkola complex, then the land value decreases and it is affected. The ecology changes suddenly. But trying to get Bandarkola complex and university inside Sector 5 instead of expanding Dharavi into Sector 5, expanding Dharavi into Bandarkola complex. If you see Sector 5, then the things which are taken into consideration are the industries, the production of recycled plastic and metals, that is from the recycling industry, what Siddharth mentioned. There are university campus, there are flexible space for new industries which can be developed because of the synergies of the university and the industries. Workshops for innovations, incubator spaces, migrant housing, and student housing. Our argument is dedensification of the center and shifting the leather industry, housing supporting the industry, and the housing which are in bad and precarious conditions. This is the dedensification plan of as the time progresses, the development happens in Sector 5. So some areas in Dharavi itself gets densified, and we could try to create much more livable conditions. Looking at the brief before, there is a need for. Looking at the brief before, if you try to create a corridor, then there is already much more higher pressure on the existing roads, that is the Western Express Highway, which is the only linkage from south to north. So is there a need for creating another spatial linkage which would cater as a service road between the 3-4 sites and try to work with each other? Now looking at the universities in India and trying to develop the universities, understand how the universities in India work. Right now, if you see IIT Kharagpur, IIT Kanpur, and IIT Guwahati, all the universities are kind of gated universities inside the city, but they are not trying to link it with the other parts. Even though universities are located in the outskirts of the city, acting as a campus independent of the city. So this is the part which we don't want in Mumbai. What we learned from UCL and Harvard is to how to integrate the city fabric, opening the gates to the other users of the city. That could create different linkages between the city and try to establish much more connection, rather than just gating it and making it a border. The mobility and the road infrastructure helps, which we understand from UC and Harvard, is to get merged with the city fabric. The morphological clusters of the buildings have different site permeability and allows the university to have a private space rather than opening from the main road. Also, the opening of the buildings is something to be learned from. If you look at the grid which to be thought of on this side, the grid allows the movement inside the university campus to get merged with the city fabric. Also, the structures from their different form, their different pedestrian movement, which doesn't coincide with the heavy traffic on the roads. Also, the formality of the structures is inverted. Frontality of the structure is inverted, so that the buildings are entered from semi-private space created. Now, if you see the industry sheds that we use in Dharavi, and that they have a similar logic to these diagrams. Now, if you see these three industrial sheds, the three industrial sheds have their own character, and the processes which are happening in the industries inside the informal region can take place in these sheds. These sheds have frontalities, which in the middle diagram you can see the frontality is inverted. The sheds are accessed from the inside corridor, whereas from that diagram you can see the sheds are accessed from the outside region. Now, arrangement of sheds. How the urban arrangement of sheds can help free the ground. Also, the composite buildings can work with industrial sheds. Now, if we learn from Ventura, Lambert, Milan, Italy, how the industrial sheds are working with composite buildings of different making an integrated project. If you try to arrange industries on a horizontal, on a ground plan map, then there is less open space, which is what Dharavi has. It has got less open space, and we have to find a certain way of stacking the industries on a horizontal manner, vertical manner. If you look at the grid of the industries, the grid allows us to have the flexibility to form clusters of the sheds. It also allows to see how different typology mixes with the industrial sheds. The grid also allows us to have different movement patterns and just creating a morphological clusters of where this industry could share its processes in this building. The plan shows the road network and hierarchy in the given site. If the road is extended has a character to be maintained and taken into sight. The industrial grid is bigger than the university grid because the grid also allows different movement to take place, thus allowing the flexibility of different industries and other typologies to integrate and create new intervals. This plan shows the permeability of the morphological clusters. There is a clear differentiation between the permeability of the two grids, where the university has got much more permeability from the road, but the entries of buildings or structures are from inside. They don't open from the main road. Whereas on the industries, the permeability of the structures are at a certain intervals where the building opens directly at the main road, and buildings open only at places where they need to connect to each other. This is the morphological build open ratio that it shows the building gradient. If you see this map, there is a mix of university, industries, labor condition, and housing. But the mix is not just in a plan. The mix should be in a horizontal and vertical manner as well. This section shows how the university mixes with the labor conditions, with the industry on the right side, and start to create new innovation environments where new startup offices can come and start together. The industries where industries can sell their products on this 90 feet road and try to expose themselves on a bigger level. This shows the labor conditions of the industries taking place. It gives opportunity for new industries to spring up. As we go towards 90 feet road, this is 90 feet road, the labor conditions changes from industries to commerce and then to other industries. Now, if you see where the mix happens between the industries and university, the industries work with the help of technical knowledge from university and thus creating spaces where new things can get tested and new industries could spring up. Whereas, for example, the leather industry and textile industry will come together and try to create something within itself, and that supports the production of leather industry and try to create new products. The cluster shows how two industries work together and which give an opportunity between synergies to happen, thus creating a new industry. Different arrangement in the sheds and organization of sheds allows different processes to take place. The diagram on the right up shows the vertical and horizontal movement. It can be seen that the structures are connected and the entry depends on the function of the building. The diagram on the road right shows the shared spaces by the clusters. The spaces are not only shared but the buildings in the clusters but by the other actors as well. There are spaces shared between university industries where new industries get introduced and they are tried and they are developed further. On the ground floor, those products which are produced in industries are sold and thus given a bigger platform for the exposure. The diagram on the lower right shows how the space is created between the university campus and the industries, where there is a campus feeling as well as there is segregation for the industries where the production will take place. The cluster shows how the industry works with the housing. Now, if you see this plan, the industries sheds are on this side and the residential buildings are on this side. But if you see the shared spaces between the two fabric, between the two different functions, different structures. The spaces which are shared are on the ground floor, as well as there are some spaces which are shared completely. The movement pattern shows that how they are connected. The ground floor is of the residential. The ground floor is industry, and above floor the residential. As well as there are some institutions which share knowledge with the industries and try to create a linkage between the work conditions and to try to expand those industries in much more technical manner. This is the third cluster, which shows how university will directly get linked with the existing with the housing conditions and try to create a new open space, new structure, and new synergy. The open space in between can be shared between all the factors, where it can be used as an open space playground by the industries, by the housing conditions, whereas this student housing can use its open space for creating a campus-like environment. These are the spaces where new startup offices can come together. They can have they can have small spaces where they can use it for a particular period of time, and they can now change for. This is the overall scheme, showing that there is a difference in the gradient from the lower region to the from the industries to the university to the housing. Now you see that there is a hierarchy of housing in Dharavi. There are houses where only pure residential is there, which is from the transit camp. What we can learn from transit camp is that how to, by putting much more denser transport lines, we can avoid big spaces where industries can spring up. This is the potential development of the site, showing the strategic plan of the site. As the area starts getting developed, the core starts getting de-densified and start opening up spaces for the areas in Dharavi itself. Whereas in the upper regions of the places where university tries to expand itself, it can be expanded on the similar principles, whereas the Dharavi is densified in this manner.
If we try to see how these four different structures would integrate Dharavi to form a more structure that the different actors can start agreeing instead of fighting with each other, especially the industry with Bandrakula complex and the housing there. We can see that the space of engagement would densify the core and requalify the existing fabric, establish new connections and new uses within the informal territory. And expanding the edge, the migrants will feed this pattern of growth together with the relocation of the live work units taken from the core and establishing new connections at the border that prevent further expansion. And requalifying the recycling industry that it recycles the present number of 80% of the garbage of Mumbai. It's recycled there, all the plastic. And how can we expand this and it becomes way more productive? And establishing new connections also with Mahim train station, that although there is a train station here, Siam train station, but Mahim turns completely the back to Dharavi, so how can we open a new entry point? And the industry-based innovation neighborhood relocating also some of the existing fabric, especially the industrial parts of it, and establishing new connections with Bandrakula complex in a more productive manner, and not in the way that they do. Because I think instead of looking at Sector 5 or as a piece of Bandrakula complex, we can start looking at how a piece of Dharavi can benefit itself from its surrounding. And I think Bhushan was explaining really well how instead of benefiting Bandrakula complex only, this can benefit Mumbai as a whole and not be another segregated environment. And inserting these new uses that link formal and informal settlement in a more strategic way.
Okay.
Sorry for the talk. Questions
and comments?
Well, I think that you guys have a tremendous amount of information collected online through these two groups. I think that you really existence in this particular site. But I think it's worth probably saying that you may need to develop more effective ways of presenting in putting more succinctly. I think your audience has also a certain amount of stamina, and you have to be charitable to your audience. But I think that no, I think it's extraordinary, really, that you've been able to understand typologies of housing and sort of the kind of typologies of urban typologies that have developed specific activities that happen in here. But there was something at the end of the presentation in your final summary that made me think about an issue regarding the different strategies and different issues that you're addressing individually. And it's the fact that you told us two key pieces of information, the train stations, and it's how this particular site is connected already to these surrounding areas. I think that it's important to state that there are some connections already, and there are some interactions already, and that you probably are going to try to reinforce those, while at the same time creating new connections with two key areas that you have identified on the other side, which is the university and the financial sector. I think that's important. That's very important. And at the same time, I think that your presentations are very inward-looking. I think they're very focused on your sectors. But I think that it's clear that you're also trying to sort of create some kind of coherence between them. But that wasn't clear because each one of you presented your bit very focused in it. And with that, you sort of lose the fact that this is all part of a larger strategy. So how is it that all these things are connected? It's very important, the connection between them. And the bit that I got more confused about, I suppose, is your housing proposal. Yes. Sorry for pointing it. I think it makes sense. You really investigate the kind of housing and spaces that develop as a result of the activities and so on. And you understood that very well, and then you made a proposal. The proposal, of course, consists of the demolition of an entire sector in order to make it better, right? But I think that again there's a stage that probably you should explore, is the fact of how is this going to be implemented so that it is successful? Because there will be a moment in which all this is going to have to be constructed, built, and here that could cause tremendous problems with the existing tenants. So I think that there is an intermediate stage that needs to be addressed in the process. So I think that, yeah.
Okay, so let me hear, Catherine.
Just picking up on
I just wanted to my railway yard is an empty plot. The extension which I am proposing, the industrial extension of recycling industry, is an empty plot. Now it currently houses, it used to be a Mahim railway yard cleaning area, but currently it is an empty plot. That's why I'm proposing an extension of the recycling industry into this region.
Right. Okay, I understand. I apologize. I understood that you were going to take this very dense area and replace it.
No. This is a completely empty plot right now. Boundary wall currently owned by the railways, and it is a part of a strategy to densify.
I think that I should have made this clear in the beginning, because when we say that we're densifying the core and we're taking key edges like Sector 5 is one of the key edges that's the last dense, and Mahim Station and the edge that SEPA was dealing with by the river. So we didn't really erase any of Dharavi, just like kind of pocket spaces in order to relocate it to. That's why he's working with the relocation and expansion of our existing area.
So yeah, I wanted to pick up on something that you said, but I apologize because it was a lot to take in, and you've done a lot of fantastic work and obviously deep analysis. So some of my comments may just be that you didn't bring those aspects out enough. Just looking, sort of working backwards, the last presentation, I'm sorry, I don't remember your names, where you were talking about the industry-based innovation. One of the things that was so striking was that we were always looking at this very bounded area. And although, in diagrammatic form, it looks like roads do connect with that perimeter, it wasn't clear how they connect. And since so much of what you spoke about was about, in a sense, turning the inside out And then my other two comments also have to do, again, just with the public realm, with the recycling industry project. One of the things I was curious about is when you were talking about the voids, there was very much a focus on the industrial activity in the process, and I thought it was very interesting about internal and external roads. But then what you had mentioned that, you know, live work is very strong there, and almost live work is kind of a luxurious term we use in this part of the world, but people are living there. But so what I was wondering about was, is there potential for open space, public realm that is much more devoted to kind of residential activity, and just that these are in a sense, again, it's a funny application of the word neighborhoods here, but they are in a sense. So that was one thing I was curious about as well.
In the region which I am focusing on is majorly a live work condition, you rightly put it, but is generally not based on the family type of live work. It's based around the live work in a sense of new workers living upstairs, so that the industry keeps running 24/7. It's like the beds are there and they exchange beds just to ensure that the industry never stops. So, and it's a shared bed system kind of an environment. And the focus was, that's why, creating voids around for the industrial utilization.
So there's no need for a social space in the sense sociability happens in different.
No, I thought the main void, the center void, these voids would act simultaneously for the social space as well. That's what the idea was. No,
I think it's also because it's hard to separate, because especially the migrants that work in the industry, it's we were trying to explain, but because of the short time, they come and they spend maybe a cycle of 4 or 5 years, and after that it's decision if they move into Tarapia or if they go back to the village. So it's like mainly young people that will come and they will just work almost the whole year, and they go back 1 month to the village, and they all send the money back to the village. So I understand the kind of worry, but it's not like the urbanism that we try to establish is in the streets and try to kind of take away some of the activities off the streets that doesn't allow movement and of urbanity as we know, and putting the center point. But as far as public realm, yes, I think they can use the other facilities that we are providing. But as just to say, it's not really the kind of work that they have there is not really time even for them to do that.
Okay, can we, Eric, Jonathan, I can see there are several wanting to speak. Can I suggest that you just make notes rather than the ping pong, and having several comments, and then perhaps you respond to them, because there are many critics and we have a problem of time as well. How to manage time? We have still another presentation. So start with Eric.
Yeah. I realize at this scale that you're dealing with a kind of strategic way of thinking. I'm interested, nonetheless, in the kind of fragility of informality in a way, the things that I'm drawn to, which I didn't find kind of immediate answers to. Was certainly the sense in which, in this world that is kind of built without architects, in a sense, you know, the things like the facade become a very layered idea, so that there's a multiplicity of use, from the scale of shops, from the scale of what happens on the skin, in the depth, in the sections, this sort of sectional complexity that is a lesson, certainly was a lesson to me, in places like Bhubaneswar in Mumbai when I studied it. And how that gets translated in your diagrams and drawings, which tended to be sections of a layering horizontally and verticality, and that were bounded rather than having a blurred kind of edge. And the other was how you would protect, given the communities who are coming to this place from very specific kind of backgrounds, the sense in which the sacred and the secular are shared territories. Because I got not one hint, apart from the positioning of the mosque, in the way in which that is such a shared phenomenon in a place like Mumbai. How that informed your, or could have informed your thinking structuring or restructuring of the proposal.
Okay,
I think
yeah. Okay, yeah.
It's an immensely complex place, and it's a life work to try and understand it, let alone think what to do about it. I think I've struck with all of you seem to be trying to improve efficiency, improve the utility of this space, and I'm left without any sense of what your intentions are with respect to improving its environmental qualities or its social value to the people who are living here. And it may to the last speaker's point, be simply a matter of economics that this is completely utilitarian part of the city, and that's all that you want to do with it. So I was left. There are seriously kind of coherent strategic moves which are about decanting planned intensification on new areas of land, the improvement of the spatial conditions of certain areas. There are lots of kind of tactical things there that you're doing, but I'm left completely lost to what are either the social or environmental improvements I don't know. Are you interested in that? Is that part of your intention as an agent for constructive change? It seems that all of you, perhaps with the exception of the first speaker, were wholly concerned with improving efficiency and utility. So I'm looking for a kind of human dimension here, human and even an environmental dimension. I'm inviting a huge issue in water resources.
They were focusing on the redevelopment of new sites, while the focus was really dealing with the core. So I think that's why you can see the difference.
Okay, there are several there. Let's jump to this side. Katarina, then Jonathan, and then Carlos.
Well, first of all, I really enjoyed it. I feel overwhelmed slightly, but I thought it has a number of very, very good productive drawings in there. I think if you go back over the presentation, probably the third few images can go. Or in a way, you should be able yourself to judge which drawings work and which don't work in terms of being productive. And particularly in the first presentation, I thought there was information, drone analysis, building up, change of scale, which is quite productive. There's a part of me who thinks, it's following on from other comments, that if you could now work maybe at least in groups, it would be much stronger. Because I think if it comes to proposition, I think you're really not as good as analysis. I think your analysis was fantastic. I think a group of architects from us could go away and now begin to design strategies because you delivered all the material. But I think your own individual proposition, I think, really flat by comparison. It's probably a factor of time, I acknowledge that. But if you could bring together several scales of reasoning, that would be much more effective. Because I think what I'm lacking is both typological specificity, the way you've shown in your space of engagement. I'd like to see more of that than the other proposals. At the same time, in your case, it would be good to see more general urban rules. Because sometimes we've been looking at large-scale urban areas where, I don't know, if you look at, glass wall housing blocks, the moment you have some permeability and some mixed use, it works. I don't know. But I think I found it difficult to understand how you can take the patterns of inhabitation, the patterns of productivity, the patterns of distribution of voice together as a strategy to define potential rules, and then sort of really push design project itself. I think we really tame what you want to achieve in design project, or what, I think you haven't quite taken on board what you could be doing with the material you have produced. My gut feeling.
Okay.
Well, just as a way to follow on from that, I think in each project you could really be, maybe the way to spend the last 3 weeks is to say, right, what are the first steps in each of your strategies? Where, for example, in the industrial site, which is an open terrain, you are next to the railway station. There looks to be like a bridge across, so there's perhaps pedestrian movement. There's certain ways in which people are moving in and around the site. Maybe that triggers where you might begin to do the first buildings and open spaces. And that similarly with your main axis in the first project. Where along that axis to actually make your first interventions, and with whom would you talk to actually get hold of the land and structure a kind of conversation? So for me, I would really sort of focus on these first steps to actually prove that all this thinking can actually be taken forward in a very pragmatic and practical way, but also conceptually strong. And just diving into a bit more detail to show exactly what kind of environments you can really create in these very first moments of the project.
So I think, following from that, actually, I think it's a conceptual piece of work, actually, and there's absolutely no comparison to what we saw earlier. Moving forward from a very serious, you've done some fantastic research, you've attempted to personalise it. I think I was in this situation last year, and I think it's very impressive in comparison to that. I think some serious work there, and I think you've done a great conviction. It is a mistake to read all the Shakespeare plays out in 2 hours, which is what we're doing. You guys are trying to speak even faster to give us even more information. So I think watch out for that. But I think it's really interesting, actually. I think you've done some very solid research. I think it has ended up being 4 projects in the end on that side. And I think 3 weeks should go back to sort of the beginning. And I think that diagram is better than the original plan of what you set out to do, because the kind of the corridor, the edge, the kind of learning zone, the industrial zone. Your first diagram is much more interesting. And I think what you should do really is to try and question now the idea of patterns of growth. I think the thing where I conceptually don't agree with you is that the project seems to be an augmentation of the existing situation in the environment. And I think you should be a little bit careful about that, because I think there are 4 different patterns of growth, there are 4 different types of initiatives. And I think you're now in a position that you've studied well enough to actually speculate on the unpredictability of that. This is not all going to flow in the way that you say. I think that's really, really very interesting indeed. And I think a lot of the comments that have been made, I'm giving you a tremendous benefit of the doubt. I really like this work, also because of the context of Mumbai. So again, I'm on this man's side, and I think you've really looked at Mumbai and almost nothing else, which is fantastic. And I think really when I recall working on the area in Mumbai, and the response from Captain Gupta, for instance, Chris was like, oh, don't worry about any of that. The developers will just bulldoze it, and we'll build another one of those kind of developments. That's what I want from everybody in Mumbai who's an architect, not from the people in the street. And I think you've done really well to kind of sort of try and understand that actually there has to be some kind of force of negation of that process of development. And I think you can bring that out more in your final piece, because I think a lot of the things that have been said about the environment and so on are actually implied in what you've done, because the option is correct. Yes, they're not exactly. Yeah.
Or improving the social value as well.
Okay, is there any other Catherine?
Well, just to add, and this probably relates to Jonathan number 1's comment, but which, in terms of the presentation, it does feel, and I agree with the comment, you could probably strip away whatever 25%, 30% of drawings. It feels a bit policy documentish, and I think in the spirit of trying to humanize it, and you have all these very provocative photographs in the beginning. Maybe we just stand on the street or stand in one of the places that you're creating that feels that it has been de-densified, and why that's a good thing now. And so there's a bit of that, as kind of cheesy as it sounds, a little bit of the before and after to help convey how you are achieving what you've said.
And also, I think because the presentation opens that way. I mean, we open sort of in the street. If you remember, it was an hour ago, so you can let me go back. But it is interesting that your instinct was to, as you said, you spend time in that setting, you understand there's a different kind of logic and ingenuity in the street. Interestingly, the hour is a kind of poem to the aerial perspective. It's a technique of the early 20th century that's actually used to organize the functional city. Corp city with 2 million people is mapped and drawn exactly like your city, way, way up above, looking down on it, to
to explain a series of arrangements that are largely programmatic in their difference, in fact so far away in most of your drawings that even formal difference disappears, let alone whether they're informal or not formal, which is what you said you were in on. And I think, you've got a moment now to, I think, gather the material together and to get back down in the street. Not for the purposes of making it more convincing, but I think to see what you're trying to understand in ways in which the means of description are a part of the project and not simply a technique used to explain the project. I think right now you're relying on the conventions of, for example, aerial, isometric / axiometric drawing, which aren't being explained. And I think you've spent enough hours doing that you ought to owe up to it. It's either a mistake to fall into it as a bad habit, or it was a way to reveal things that couldn't otherwise be seen on the street. But I think to connect how you work on the project with the project you're working on would be very interesting. I mean, there's a lot of paradoxical meta qualities to what you're doing to this dense place. It's a very dense project. I mean, you've actually out-densified the project in the last hour. I've never been to a 67-minute presentation with 900 strategies, all of which are being deployed with total straight face, If you go back to your 5 points at the very first slide, like if you do that to your presentation now, de-densify, relocate. And I mean it not in an editorial critic sense, although I'm tempted. But it's more to actually open up the demand of how you work on the project matters as much as this site or the location or the discovery there. I think you haven't spoken about why the four of you divided the work up the way you did. Ironically, it's the development model of separation. It's purely geographic, i.e. ownership driven. There's no way in which, one of you could be the infrastructure person. You would either be an infrastructural explanation of all four sites that would be like private. One person would be the typology. And interestingly, you've got enough overlaps in it that you can use the next 2 or 3 weeks, I think, quite creatively and have a very different kind of description that gives you a set of tools and things to take forward in addition to the knowledge that you say you're getting out of the project. It's going to be a great way to finish. Certainly an interesting challenge, this one. I mean, this one is done. Like, you're there. Unless we give you another hour to keep going. Sorry, you've already stolen too much.
Okay, is there any other comment? Otherwise, if you want to just briefly respond to questions.
I think it's key, this question of, and there was one thing that we had of looking up or looking down was one of the key questions we had, especially when we went to interview the people. But what we found was the impasse was that the people that were always looking the street level, making everything look nice, they never really understood the scale of the art and the scale of things. And those looking from the top, they didn't consider all the things from the street. And of course, that's how we started looking down to understand that art. Well, have you ever been in Islam? Everything is in your face 24 hours. You can't really draw things at ground level without filtering. So I think the tactics that we used was to try to filter the kind of information that we're ready to explain. Maybe if you draw at ground level, we can explain in 1 minute, but you will fall like it's falling from the sky. And then I understand it's very dense, and trust me, we condensed a lot. And it's something that for presentation needs to be read, but since it's also going to be a written piece and each of us has to focus, I think we had to present in the ways that we were thinking so we could explore and explain each point to get this conclusion.
But I think Brett's pushing you to do what you set out to do, which is informality as a method. So you must find a way of dealing with that intensity of everything in your face on the street and the overall view in a more synthetic manner as a designer. Because your premise is that architects and urban planners shouldn't be in these cities, and how do we deal with it? Then I think in the next 3 weeks needs to be to develop your own method. It's just the beginnings of a practical method rather than an analytical method, which is what you have. You have a strategic method, which is what is the design and drawing method that you can come up with to deal with that and get that simultaneity of the kind of reality of with the bigger picture that you can offer.
So I think the first two actually are very strong research of the dynamic kind. They're not top-down, they're not axiometric. So I think the exchange corridor is very interesting, and the idea of the service being, and I think the community one is incredibly strong too. The idea that these people come and take over a particular sector. The whole thing is totally moving, and it's very much what that area of Mumbai is all about. And I think at the end you lose better, and I think you need to bring that out. It's not a question of what you interview. I think that's so interesting. I think a lot of the research we've done with the dynamic system. That's why I was saying the patterns of change are very interesting, and the idea of how your patterns of change might fit with the context of Mumbai, which answers some of the questions that were asked here on the right. Because I think the economic initiatives and so on are going in a different direction. So I think if you could actually just bring the project back into a live realm, it would be fantastic, rather than being slightly, by the end you were selling as the project. I think the research is actually more interesting than the project. I think it's some really good stuff, actually, in terms of trying to work with a dynamic system in an area like this, where that's totally dependent.
Okay, we are running out of time, but you went very briefly, when this is still hanging in the air, this comment that your approach is very much focused on questions of productivity, efficiency, etc., to the detriment of social considerations. I think that's something that still we need to address. Eric raised also a series of questions that you haven't yet addressed, including that one of the sacred and the profane, and how to approach that.
Going to the sacred and the profane and the environmental and this, I think we tried in the beginning a long time ago, 1 hour ago. We tried to face, and specifically of the sacred and the profane, that's the case that varies all the time. You can see the case studies that I took not accidentally did have the most. They were in all the temples were in way more local scale. The temples are almost everywhere. There is not such division. As you say, the most has and such presence of the traditional point that I didn't want to focus on religion because for other religions as well. But that's what these pockets are. It's almost like a relief space inside. All these things happen in your face all the time. So you're right. It's something that needs to be said, but it's specifically about the improving the quality of life and dealing with the environmental characteristics. That's what we're trying to do, especially in the central core. And I know that it doesn't reflect in other sites as well, but it's because they are empty plots of land that I want to do a lot. So I think that's why the shift was here.
The question we really focused on the issue of productivity and specifically industrial productivity, because when we went to Dharavi all the time, the issue is always, you're talking of land value, but look at Dharavi, we are a hub of industry which the West can't even hope of having, I mean, literally. And so then it comes down that are you going to attack the issue which attack the core issue, and that's what we try to do. That if you do not deal with the issue of industrial productivity, if you do not deal with the issue of how industries work in Dharavi, then literally you are not hoping this project can ever happen, because that is what is the driving force of most of the slums in India. So these industries are actually working for the globe. I mean, leather is exported to Germany. It is so this put us into the question: are we looking at but if we don't look at that kind of an environment, if we just say, okay, let's look at human scale and some micro scale intervention, then we lose it then. Because when we go back this...
Human scale is not of minor scale.
I agree with you. That's an absolutely key issue, and you addressed it. My point was rather about what else. What else are you trying to do?
I think